It was supposed to be roadkill, a quick scrape and bag before sunrise, but the eyes ruined that. The buck lay half across the center line, steam curling from its chest into the cold. I'd been on the job exactly 12 days, still counting every mistake out loud just to prove I could learn. The manual said there were 15 rules. 8 was the only one anyone ever mentioned twice. Never touch an animal that opens its eyes twice. I figured that meant something poetic. Grief, guilt, don't stare at what's already gone. Not literal. So when the eye twitched open once, I chalked it up to reflex, standard nerve discharge. I bent down, gloved hand reaching for the tag wire, muttering, "Easy pal, all done now." Then the second blink happened. Slow, deliberate, like recognition. The deer exhaled a sound halfway between a whistle and a sigh. Steam clouded up, then dragged toward me as though the air switched directions. Its ribs shivered in sequence, rising once and stopping mid-breath. The socket around that jerking eyelid collapsed, muscles pulling inward. For a heartbeat, the face looked almost human. I should have waited for backup. Instead, I touched the fur near its throat, cold, slick with rain, and pulsing. One beat against my palm, then silence again. From behind me, the reflective lettering on the truck's hood shifted color in the glow of my flashlight, white to dull amber, like something breathing under paint. Wind flattened against the cab's side panel with 3 slow thumps. Plastic rustled inside where my disposal bags hung on their hooks, one after another flexing as if filled and emptied by breath. Somewhere in that noise, the deer's eye opened a third time, wide and calm, and I understood the rule too late. Once is reflex, twice is warning. The third blink means it's counting you. Animal recovery technician doesn't sound glamorous, but after 3 months of unemployment, anything with a state logo and a gas card qualifies as salvation. My hiring interview lasted 7 minutes. Work nights, drive safe, don't puke easily, Supervisor Denton said. I signed the form before he finished the sentence. The garage sat at the edge of the county landfill. The smell turned every cup of coffee into compost by osmosis. 3 recovery trucks idled in a double bay, their sides stenciled County Wildlife Control. Someone had crossed out wildlife with marker and written afterlife. I thought it was a joke. Marv Weller was the senior tech, a man carved from dust and nicotine stains. He carried the laminated 15 rules like a saint's relic and swore by every line. He said they were older than OSHA, older than the county charter, maybe older than the road itself. I laughed. He didn't. He folded the sheet, pressed it to my chest, and said, "They'll save your hide exactly once. After that, you either follow them or join the collection." The rules were half graffiti, half Bible. Some made normal sense. Wear gloves, check for rabies tags, log everything. Others looked like scribbles written at midnight by the wrong kind of priest. Whistle between midnight and 3 a.m. so they know you're awake. If it bleeds clear, don't bag it, spray lime and burn. If the radio plays what you're thinking, turn it off and wait for static. Rule 8, never touch an animal that opens its eyes twice. Denton pretended the list didn't exist. Technicians come up with folklore, he said when I asked, scare themselves into staying alert. He couldn't explain why a printed copy hung in every truck's glove compartment. Most nights were what I'd expected. Endless asphalt, the sweet rot stink of roadkill, headlights painting brief crime scenes across the shoulder. We'd scrape, bag, tag, log, and deliver to the rendering pit by dawn. Silence filled the gaps between diesel rattle and my own humming. Rule 11 recommended it. Apparently humming kept them from nesting. The job had a rhythm, 1 body every 10 miles, 1 coffee every 2 stops. It wasn't until the second week when I watched Marv scatter salt around a flattened raccoon and whisper numbers under his breath that I realized none of this was sarcasm. He treated the dead like unstable chemistry. "Why the salt?" I asked. "Because it hates mirrors," he said. When I laughed, he didn't. When the shift ended, I sat in the garage's break room flipping the laminated sheet over and over until the plastic edge cut my thumb. 15 rules. 1 through 7 were simple hygiene, 9 through 15 were just riddles. But the one bolded in red, Rule 8, tugged at me even then. Never touch an animal that opens its eyes twice. No explanation, no exception. The next night we drew patrol on Route 59. Marv handed me the salt bucket and said, "You'll learn why on your own." He was right, I did, and learning cost him his face. My first solo call was easy on paper. One raccoon, east shoulder of County Route 12. First week on nights, Marv rode shotgun drinking stale gas station coffee and grading my performance like an instructor with a death wish. Rule 1 in that plastic sheet couldn't be simpler. Always approach from behind. Roadside carcasses can still twitch. Nerves, possums, zombies, whatever. Come from the tail, no surprises. I remembered everything until the flashlight caught the glint of teeth. It wasn't fear that made me forget. It was boredom mixed with pity. The raccoon lay half on its back, paws curled like it was holding the rein. I circled around, stepped in front to get the weight spread right, shoved the scraper under its ribs. Easy. Then, clack. Jaw snapped shut on my glove, hard as pliers. No spinal movement, no twitch, just mouth. For an animal that should have been flayed in two, it bit with purpose. Marv yanked me backward. "Drop it!" He dumped half a coffee thermos of salt over the head, growling, "Rule 1. The raccoon's eyes bulged beneath white crampons of salt, and blue smoke hissed from its nose. Marv didn't stop until the thing crumbled soft as wet paper. The smell made me vomit. Antifreeze, ozone, fur burned to rubber. He kept scattering grains in a circle around the spot, counting quietly. "No blood," he murmured. "Means it was already one of the echoes." "Echoes of what?" I asked between heaves. Marv shook his head. "That's Rule 15, don't ask." He walked back to the truck, left me on the shoulder with steam rising from the asphalt like a breathing thing. When he returned, he carried a quartz jar of gasoline and a matchbox. The joke in my mouth died when the fire hit the salted patch and lit green instead of orange. Flame spirals spun against the wind. Marv watched until the seal crusted to ash. Only then did he speak. "Rule 2, you always burn whatever answers you back." He handed me a spare pair of gloves. "Now you've got skin in it. Congratulations, you're part of animal control." Back at the depot, he logged the incident as standard pickup. No mention of biting or blue flame. He even offered me his thermos to congratulate me. Inside wasn't coffee, just lukewarm salt water. Before clockout, I checked the truck's mirror to wipe mud off my cheek. For a second, the reflection lagged. My mouth moved a beat behind me. The delayed copy blinked twice. I don't know which of us smiled first. A week later, I finally sat down and recopied the 15 rules into my own notebook, partly to memorize them, partly because I needed proof that the weirdness was real. At the garage, everyone treated the laminated sheet like an unspoken religion. You did the rituals, you didn't quote the scripture. Each truck's copy looked slightly different, handwriting and punctuation off, like someone kept updating them by hand and relaminating. Mine smelled faintly of ozone. Across Rule 8, a drop of something clear had dried to the shape of a fingerprint. I wrote each line slow under the buzzing light. 1. Always approach from behind. The dead still flinch. 2. Never bag what screams when it should steam. 3. Bleeding clear means alive in reverse. Burn it. 4. Whistle between midnight and 3 so they know you're awake. 5. Turn off the radio if it starts talking in your voice. 6. Count every specimen twice. If numbers don't match, 1 got up. 7. If you hear chittering after dark, kill your headlights and wait. The living use light for aim. 8. Never touch an animal that opens its eyes twice. 9. Don't bag birds. Their jobs aren't done. 10. Return all specimens before sunrise or they'll return themselves. 11. If ashes shift after burning, add salt until silence. 12. Park facing east. Engines don't like to see where they've been. 13. Answer no questions from other trucks. They stopped belonging to us. 14. Whistle again on the way home so the road lets you leave. 15. Never ask where the ashes go. Copying them made something tighten behind my eyes.
Each rule sounded stupid by itself, but together they hummed, a pattern with rhythm. At number 7, my pen began to scratch of its own accord, dragging a perfect circle around Rule 8 until the page almost tore. When I blinked, the line was gone, but dented into the paper like fingernail pressure. Marv caught me rewinding radio frequencies later. "Don't study 'em," he said. "Thinking about rules is how stories breed." He saw my notebook and sighed. "You rewrote them, didn't you?" I nodded. He laughed, harsh smoke erupting. "Congratulations, now they'll expect you to add one." Later that night, alone in the truck, I flipped the page to jot something about fuel mileage. My handwriting waited for me at the bottom margin, fresh and damp. 16. You already broke 1. Don't break 8. The cab smelled briefly like dead leaves and bleach. I slammed the notebook shut and pushed it under the seat. Outside, a coyote barked once, flat and human, as though repeating the line back to me.
Marv liked to talk when the thermos was half empty. Most guys ranted about overtime. He told confessions disguised as folklore. It was 2 a.m. on a frost-slick back road when he said, "You ever wonder why this county pays triple hazard for something that smells like jerky?" I shrugged. Wildlife diseases? Drunk drivers? He grinned without humor. Because the world doesn't like leftover pieces, we tidy up what evolution forgot to delete. He told me about 1986, when animal control was still a volunteer outfit. 4 techs went to pick up a black bear flattened by a freight hauler. Sounded easy, except the thing never cooled down. Hours after death, steam seeping through fur, heart cavity humming like a fridge compressor. They bagged it anyway, dragged it onto the flatbed. When the sun came up, the entire truck cab was empty. Dash melted smooth, seats gone. Just impressions in vinyl where people used to sit, and a low breeze circling the lot, thumping every 30 seconds. In, out, in, out. Rule 14 didn't exist before that night, he said. That's why we whistle on the way home now. Reminds the dirt to keep breathing out, not in. He swallowed a mouthful of coffee, looked sideways at me. They told the families there'd been a chemical spill. You know what really spilled? Noise. Once a body learns how quiet is supposed to sound, it keeps practicing until folks stop noticing the difference. I tried to make a joke of it. So we're basically sanitation for silence? He nodded slow. That's not bad. Silence gets parasites. We take them out, burn them, start over. But every decade or so it fights back. The truck headlights picked up a dead fox ahead. He eased over, turned off the engine, ritual more than necessity, and flicked his lighter open. Foxes blink twice before they learn to talk, he said. You'll see. I didn't answer. Some knowledge costs too much to ask the next question. When we dropped the fox at the incinerator, Marv scrawled 4 extra digits on the tag, then crossed them out so hard the metal tore. After signing the log, he hummed a little tune that fell between a prayer and the grind of the furnace gears. At the time, I figured he was crazy. Now I know the hum wasn't random. Listening back on the dash recorder later, the frequency he hummed matched the gap between ventilator cycles in the burn pit. Every machine breathes the same way when something inside tries to remember lungs. Rain always means double shifts, more wrecks, more bodies. That night, the radio barked 12 calls in 3 hours before static swallowed the dispatcher. Marv's voice was still saved on speed dial, but he'd been transferred for a week, which in our line means stop asking. At 4:10 a.m., the highway opened around me like a wound, one long smear of wet silver leading to an overturned semi. A deer lay pinned against the guardrail, ribs splayed, tongue black. On nights like this, you either cry or joke your way through. I chose joking. Congratulations, pal, you held up better than the truck. Steam coiled out of its chest. Nothing strange about that in cold rain, except the breath came in rhythm. 5 in, 5 out. I leaned close to zip the tagging loop through its hind leg. The left eye popped open. Blink 1. Just a reflex, eye muscles do that. Then blink 2, slow, deliberate movement following me. The pupils sharpened to points, thin as tire tracks.
Every rule in the manual screamed pull back, but training and disbelief wrestled halfway inside me. "Okay, buddy, just nerve stuff," I muttered, gloved hand on its throat to keep it still. That was the moment the rule broke, and I felt it notice me. The skin under my palm tightened around something that pushed back, a pulse, steady and wrong. The deer exhaled steam that smelled of bleach and cold metal. It fogged my visor from the inside. The radio clicked to life with Marv's static-caked voice reciting numbers, 8 digits looping, counting down, 8, 7, 6, and then silence. Rain stopped mid-fall. Drops hung suspended like beads on string. Inside the truck, plastic bags rustled. Something heavy shifted in the metal bed without me touching it. Through the rear window, I saw 3 bulges in the black bags heave up and down, breathing. The deer twitched again, and the mirror filled with light. At first, I thought it was a passing car until I saw the wrong color, amber mixed with blue, like flame drowning in water. The deer lifted its head. The bones in its neck moved like they'd been wired together by somebody forgetful of anatomy. I backed away toward the truck, boots splashing in motionless rain puddles. Every raindrop stayed suspended until I touched it, then it split like glass. The blink came again, 3rd time, followed by a sound no throat should make, a wet, slow word made from pressure instead of voice. You. The bags in the truck burst open, releasing air that howled like turbine intake. Shapes tumbled out, roadside animals from earlier runs, their forms outlined in saltburn scars, folding together into one mass that pulled the deer back upright. Inside that fusion, muscle rearranged. I saw a hand. Human skin, gray and stretched, reached for the visor. It stopped inches from my face and flattened, mirroring my own hand gesture exactly as I raised it. Then it smiled, its jaw hinge a fracture across multiple skulls, until the world snapped forward and rain fell again, cold as truth. When I came to, the deer was gone. Heel marks in the mud showed something had walked on 2 legs toward the trees. Not hoofed, barefoot. Only one print matched mine. Back in the truck, the rule sheet had melted to the dashboard. All that remained read in raised bubbles. 8. Never touch something that remembers being dead.
They wrapped the incident in plastic before sunrise. By the time other trucks reached my coordinates, the deer was just a smear of ash and tire salts. Supervisor Denton arrived in a hazmat suit so clean it squeaked. He didn't ask what happened, he just snapped pictures, then pointed at my gloves. "Bag those too." I started explaining, but a second crew was already building a perimeter. Orange tape, road flares, silver drums labeled bioanimalous waste. 2 men sprayed the shoulder with lime until the air hissed acidic. One muttered, "clear breather case," and kept his visor down. They loaded my truck onto a flatbed and drove me to the annex, the one that doesn't appear on the county map. Inside, bright lights, white tiles, steel doors. Quarantine. They left me there 48 hours with a plastic cot, a clipboard of psychological evaluations, and a speaker cycling through emergency codes. When the feed crackled, I heard Marv's voice reading the rules. Only his cadence was off, each line ending in longer silences. By the 12th rule, the pauses were breathing. When I pounded on the door, the breathing kept tempo with my fists. On day 2, the panel slid open. Denton stood behind glass. He looked well-rested, even cheerful. "Congratulations," he said. "You followed protocol after incident impact, mostly." He made a note. "Just don't write reports about blinks. It confuses payroll." "What about Marv?" I asked. He paused mid-scribble. "Transferred." "To where?" He smiled tight. "Where all the ash goes." He handed me an envelope stamped "Return to Duty." By nightfall, they released me. The lot outside was empty, every bay washed spotless. Marv's locker door yawned open, hinges polished. Inside sat a sealed urn the size of a coffee tin, label typed in bold, Rule 15 Protocol, Personal Effects. Denton's handwriting across the bottom read, "Handled per regulation by next of kin." A folded note rested beside it, faint fingerprints smudged in gray. 4 words, nothing else.
Don't look at them twice. When I started my engine to drive home, static bled through the radio. Underneath came Marv's rasp, a whisper both close and gone. He was counting softly from 1 to 8 and back again, like lullaby rhythms played in reverse. Sleep stopped working after quarantine. I kept seeing the deer's eye in the dark, thin black pupil widening until it filled the whole room. When I blinked, the after image stayed, so I stopped blinking. The next night, I broke back into the yard. Technically trespass, morally salvage. If the county was going to torch another accident under biohazard, I wanted the truth first. The office was too clean. All computers freshly imaged, lockers labeled vacant. Marv's nameplate had been scrubbed off with acid instead of tools, the metal itself pitted around ghost letters. The camera room still hummed though, red dot blinking on the main terminal. One drive survived the wipe. I loaded the footage from the week before my incident. Half the feed was static, half was worse. Frame 1. Marv loading a hunting blind and half-burned sack into the bed of his truck. The sack moved, slow, rhythmic shifts, like something asleep inside trying to roll over. Frame 2. He set 3 bags in a circle, uncapped a thermos, poured liquid that steamed black on the asphalt. For a moment, shapes rose through smoke. Deer limbs, raccoon tails, then human fingers. The sparks they gave off weren't light, they negated light. Frame 3. Audio kicked on. Marv muttered the 15 rules in low breath, shuffling the order like a gambler stacking cards. When he reached 8, the figure in the bag whispered it with him, perfectly synchronized. That same whisper echoed through the speaker now, long after the clip ended. I scrubbed forward for the timestamp. 03:52 a.m. The semi that hit my deer registered at 04:10, 18 minutes apart, which meant whatever Marv had burned, or tried to, didn't stay dead, and stepped back into the road in time for me to finish the job. A growl of hydraulics outside jolted me. Every door on the bay opened on its own. The burners in the far drumline flared bright blue, smoke curling like handwriting. In the haze, words formed briefly before dissipating. Rule 11, return all specimens before sunrise. I looked at my watch, 4:31 a.m., sunrise at 5:12. The fire pit's ignition lights clicked off one by one. Each time they died, a long exhale sighed through the building, and the thermostat needle dropped closer to freezing. The final pit went dark. Glass in the observation window reflected my face split down the middle by ash and frost, 2 images a half-second apart. The copy blinked first, once, then again. I didn't go home so much as drift there with daylight still half an hour away. My wipers traced black arcs through fog that refused to move. Every few miles the radio flared, one breath of Marv's laughter, a pop of static, then silence again. The truck bed should have been empty. It wasn't. Through the cab window, 3 disposal bags sat stacked tidy in the corner, sealed, tags fluttering in the defroster's draft. I hit the brakes. The bags thudded but didn't topple. I didn't load them. Each tag had my ID number scrawled in what looked like dried rust. Below that, 2 words rewritten over the printed line of specimen return, Rule 11 broken. When I stepped out, the world felt muffled, a thick film between me and air. Frost crawled up the glass of the cab from the inside, tracing outlines of hooves. Something shifted in the nearest bag, a long, slow stretch, followed by a sigh, then stillness. The smell came next, that same burned sweet chemistry from birch pit, mixed now with wet fur and ozone. I should have burned them on the spot. Instead, I fumbled my knife, slit the first seam wide. Inside wasn't flesh. It was pale ash, compacted and cold, molded into the vague shape of a creature mid-curl. When I stirred it, the ash collapsed and exhaled, a real deliberate breath. The plume of dust it sent upward was shaped like a rib cage before dissolving into fog. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Caller ID, Denton. Static hissed as I answered. All accounts balanced, he said, voice thin as fax paper. Congratulations. Enjoy the promotion. Where are you? Click. Line dead. From the tree line, something moved. At first, I thought it was a man, size, gait, until the light from my truck touched its head. Antlers, tall as radio towers, branching into shapes that almost spelled letters. And under the hide-stitched chest, human shoulders bulged against the seams. Blue coveralls hung half-rotted from its frame, reflective patches still reading County Wildlife Control.
It stepped forward on slick hooves that left bare footprints. Not prints in mud, bare feet, mine. "Rookie," it said in a dozen mangled voices, every vowel sliding like wet gears. "Bag and tag, Rule 15. The truck's engine roared to life of its own accord. Rear tires spun, bags burst open in the bed, spilling ash that spiraled into the cab, coating the controls in gray. On the windshield, the dust traced letters backward from inside, "Where the ashes go." By the time I could see again, the thing in coveralls had reached the road. It turned its head, Marv's jaw showing through the deer's snout, and lifted one hand in recognition. With the other, it beckoned. The vines of antler and bone creaked like rusted metal against sky. Then it melted into fog, leaving only tracks that looked like burn marks, leading back toward the garage. I shifted into drive. The truck didn't move. The road behind me was gone, replaced by rows of piled bags stretching past the headlights. Sealed, numbered, their tags blinking soft amber like eyes coming awake for the first time. Monday came anyway. Sun bright, birds loud, world pretending not to remember. I parked outside the depot because some dull part of me still believed a time card could fix this. The building looked scrubbed new, fresh paint, new trucks lined up like domesticated animals. But behind the glass stood people I didn't know, wearing my old uniform. Their smiles didn't fit their faces. The sign above the bay door no longer read Animal Control. It said Reclamation Division, and underneath, the county slogan in smaller print, "We keep the world clean."
I walked in. The air was wrong, too cold for daylight, humming like a chest freezer. The new hires gathered around a corkboard where the laminated rules hung bright as birth certificates, 15 lines bullet-pointed. Halfway down, a fresh edition blinked violet in the overhead lights. 8. Never touch an animal that opened its eyes twice. Past tense, sealed and done. I touched the page anyway. The lamination felt warm. The reflection in it smiled back before I did. Supervisor Denton appeared behind the glass office wall. Same tie, same grin, older eyes. "Welcome home," he said, voice fed through the intercom. "Paperwork waiting on your desk. Promotion came through faster than expected." "What kind of promotion?" "Replacement." He nodded toward the team. "They'll need someone who knows the rules." Out front, the line of trucks shimmered in the heat, valves hissing softly in rhythm. Inhale, exhale. Their back doors twitched open and closed like breathing. I turned to leave, but outside, one more body waited against the hood of my pickup, a deer standing upright, skin patchworked with blue coverall fabric. Its eyes were mine now, amber against daylight. It blinked once, then again. Behind it, the horizon filled with dark shapes, dragging along the shoulder like garbage bags on legs. Inside, Denton's intercom buzzed a last instruction. "Bag and tag, rookie. Work's never done." The world felt heavier with each blink, as if every closed lid sealed another corpse inside the daylight. I understood then why the rules never changed in spirit. This isn't a job. It's repentance on rotation. Someone always has to keep silence from rotting. So here's the only warning left to write down, the 16th rule if you need another to believe in. When the animals start remembering your face, it's already your turn on the table. If you ever take a job with too many rules and not enough reasons, quit. If the manual smells like salt instead of ink, burn it. And if you see anything blink twice, don't touch it. Run. Because whatever's inside those bags is still counting, and it always stops at the same number.